As a responsible person with growing concerns for your privacy and personal liberty, you want to know where we're headed and what you can do about it. We ask the experts what you need to do to take prudent and responsible action to safeguard your family's wealth and well-being, and what basic first steps will help you to be aware and prepared. ReluctantPreppers.com.
If I own gold or silver, how will I ever be able to spend it?
Oh, sure. Well, consider good times or bad times. Like in good times, you can sell it back to the same place you bought it from. sdbullion.com/RP will buy it back at the best price guaranteed on the internet. You can take it to a local coin shop and get cash in your hand, completely anonymous. Some people you know may be willing to take gold or silver coins in exchange for goods or services. Now, in bad times, when things have really fallen apart, time after time in history, people have found that in hard times, gold and silver really does come through as something that people recognize as value even after everything else has failed. Your first ounce of silver is at spot price, and you get free shipping on any order over $99 at sdbullion.com/RP. Reluctant Preppers provides educational awareness and commentary only. Opinions expressed do not constitute personalized financial advice. Viewers are encouraged to do their own research and seek qualified personal financial consultation before making investment decisions. Welcome back, Reluctant Preppers. We have a returning guest tonight that you're sure to recognize. We are speaking with Jim Rawls. He is the editor and founder of survivalblog.com, one of the oldest and most popular preparedness websites out there. Today is Thursday, June 20th, 2019. James, thanks for joining us here again on Reluctant Preppers.
Thanks for having me on.
We wanted to circle back with you because you've been with us in the past talking about such things as the gold-silver ratio and the platinum-gold ratio and so on. Today and last night we had a major breakout of precious metals from a long time. Bill Murphy set a 6-year base, but it's also coinciding with extreme volatility, potentially to the upside or down, in the major stock markets, currently breaking to the S&P to new highs, and also a vault up in the crypto space, all on the heels of geopolitical concerns. So could you give us a preparedness-minded, sort of a sober view of what you see happening, what you think are the major factors that are driving all of this action, and where you think people need to be considering where they should place themselves to protect themselves from potential major losses ahead?
Sure. Well, I guess to start, I think the main drivers of the breakout probably have to do with the Federal Reserve Board and war drums in the Persian Gulf. And I think that between the two of those, most of the institutional investors in the precious metals arena recognize that all the platinum metal group metals and gold and silver are seriously undervalued, and the market is moving accordingly. It's pretty clear that the Federal Reserve Board is kind of out of arrows in their quiver, and they're not going to be raising rates. If anything, they may be forced to lower rates again soon. The markets all recognize that, and I think that's what's driving the stock market breakout as well, is the prospect of lower interest rates. Meanwhile, in the crypto world, it's interesting to see that Bitcoin just passed $9,300 per BTC again. And I've been pretty bearish on crypto for the last couple of years, but I actually put forth a kind of a qualified buy recommendation not to exceed 2.5% of anyone's portfolio for Bitcoin.
And again, does this tie back to your observations of, you said like war drums in the Middle East? Are you picturing that the rush to alternatives such as precious metals and cryptos is related to a risk-off trade in people's minds?
Yeah, and especially if you look at precious metals in dollar terms versus euro terms, and with Bitcoin, I think everyone wants to have portability. And when you come right down to it, nothing is more portable than being able to memorize a passphrase for a Bitcoin wallet. That's something that can't be intercepted. It's something that can cross a border when you cross a border, or can be sent in advance of you crossing a border. And the folks in the crypto world, I think, recognize the fact that if there is a regional war in the Middle East, or if this thing blows all the way up into a world war, that Bitcoin will be the most portable way to move money around in a hurry.
So not only portable, but undetectable is what you're saying.
Yeah, I was just going to say precious metals have the same kind of advantages. It's just, especially with platinum and gold, they're quite portable, quite compact, and most of the smaller size units carry no serial number whatsoever. So it's also anonymous if it's going into a market in another country. So a lot of folks are recognizing that, and I think that's one of many factors that's driving precious metals right now. If anything, I think that people should be investing in silver rather than gold, unless your main concern is getting on an airplane and fleeing the country. There's no reason why you shouldn't be in silver rather than gold. Granted, silver is what is it, 82 times less compact than gold per dollar, but the potential for silver is much better than gold, especially given the current gold to silver ratio. I think silver is seriously undervalued versus gold, and the opportunity of doubling your money is much better with silver than gold. It's really not all that far to see silver jump from the $15 range to $30 an ounce. It's a long, long way to go for gold to double. Mm-hmm. So it's almost like buying penny stocks.
If we could turn our attention to another concern that's been on the mind of a lot of people in the independent media, including myself and others, and perhaps you could weigh in on other, for example, preparedness websites or people who are interested in Second Amendment rights and so on, is the topic of internet censorship. We've certainly seen waves of it. It seems to come back around every time we approach every presidential election recently. But what are you seeing currently that's giving you either reason for extra concern or extra hope in the area of internet censorship?
Well, I have some of both. The concern is that YouTube just had a huge wave of censorship, and it affected people pretty much across the political spectrum. It was mainly conservatives that got hit, but even some liberals had their channels demonetized or just shut down completely. And right now, a lot of the YouTube creators are pushing toward a new decentralized platform. The service that I recommend is actually a piece of software that you load on your laptop or on your smartphone. It's an app called LBRY, and that's written LBRY, Lima, Bravo, Romeo, Yankee. LBRY is a completely distributed blockchain-based system for sharing files, whether primarily video files, because it's designed as an alternative to YouTube, but all sorts of files, including text files, music, artwork, you name it. It's all going to be available on LBRY, and it will be basically unstoppable. They won't be able to stop this signal because it's not a website that you're visiting. The address for a LBRY file actually works like an HTTP address. It's fully distributed, blockchain-based, and again, it can't be stopped. I highly recommend it. Do get involved with LBRY because censorship is coming, folks. It's only going to get worse between now and the 2020 election. So get set up with LBRY. You will be very glad you did.
Something worth looking into. We've certainly had a lot of interest and recommendations, frankly, from viewers and other collaborators and other creators over the years, saying, "Oh, you've got to quit being dependent on YouTube. You've got to get your own website. You've got to get onto Patreon. You've got to get onto BitChute. You've got to get onto Brighteon Network." It was, and on and on. And now we've heard that Jordan Peterson, the psychologist out of University of Toronto, is starting a new one called ThinkSpot. And that's supposed to be promising to be without censorship, etc. So it's definitely a concern that's been needed to be addressed, and it seems very much so that it's been in fits and starts. So hopefully LBRY may be a meaningful and sustained capability that's been sorely lacking for giving people different alternatives. It's so ironic. We want to be in the independent media, but we don't feel independent at all.
Well, with LBRY, there is the opportunity for people to be compensated for their work because there's a cryptocurrency of sorts that's attached. People can actually charge for content in this cryptocurrency, and you earn cryptocurrency by uploading things and making your platform available for processing. Just like a lot of other blockchain-based things, it's fully decentralized.
Steemit was the other one I was meaning to think of that was similar in that regards to some extent.
I think this one actually has a better chance of taking off because the interface is very similar to YouTube. It actually has a small algorithm built into it based on your preferences and what streams you subscribe to in terms of what streams it'll recommend. But beyond that, there are some drawbacks, of course, because anytime you have no censorship at all, you're basically trusting in people to restrain themselves. And that restraint in terms of things like foul language or pornography or copyright violation, all are at risk. In fact, when my first visit to LBRY, just the other day, I checked, like most people, like when they go to Google for the first time, they type their name in. Well, I typed my name in, and sure enough, someone had a copy of one of my nonfiction books. It's titled How to Survive the End of the World as We Know It. That book in Mobi format was already up on LBRY. But I'm willing to live with that for the sake of having a truly free, independent platform that can't be shut down. I'm willing to suffer the loss of some copyright violation like that.
Yeah,
it's the price of freedom. I hate to say it, but it's true.
We wanted to touch on one more topic with you, and that's about, we've touched with you in the past, and that's on strategic relocation. Just wondering, with this bubble of everything that it's been called, that's been affecting real estate in addition to the stock markets, and et cetera, do you have any new perspectives on what people should be considering as they think about the timing and ways to afford strategic relocation?
Well, in terms of timing, I believe that the Trump administration has given us a little buffer. It's given us a wider window of opportunity that if Hillary Clinton had been elected, then that window would have already closed. As it is, however, because of the economic growth based on Trump's election and the continuation of artificially low interest rates, we're seeing the real estate market hold up longer and higher than I would have anticipated otherwise. And the window of opportunity then has been extended. This is folks' chance to cash out of their property in the big cities or in the suburbs and find a property in the country for either retirement or if they have a home-based business or they telecommute, to go ahead and relocate. I think that people would be well advised to make the move now, get to your intended retreat location, get settled in, get to know your neighbors, get your fruit and nut trees established, get your garden in, because time really is short. thankfully, we've had this window of opportunity. I think it's going to close probably with the 2020 election or soon after. I think that, if anything, we're going to see some economic troubles between now and the election, possibly engineered by the powers that be to make sure that Donald Trump is not reelected. I think they would rather see the system crash, or at least a stock market crash, a real estate crash, and an auto industry crash, rather than see Trump reelected.
Related question about this window of opportunity is, if people make a move now, it's a little bit tricky when you're looking at like the cycles of real estate bubbles, wanting to sell into a rising or our peak market, and then but not necessarily buy into that same market. Are there any strategies that you talk to people about to kind of tread water during that in-between time? Or
yes,
go ahead.
One thing that I often bring up with my consulting clients, and that I've mentioned in my blog, is the possibility of, for those who don't have the opportunity to move right now, is selling your house and then renting it back from the new owners. If you were to say sell it to a property management company and then rent it back, you'd have the opportunity to cash out now, pretty much at the peak of the market, and I think we're just about there. In fact, in some markets are already starting to decline slightly. I think that's only going to accelerate with time. But if you sell your house and then rent it back, then you have perhaps the opportunity to get out at the top. At the other end of the transaction, if you do have the opportunity to move now, but you don't want to be buying your new property at current market prices, is to buy your new property with a lease to own arrangement, the seller, where you would have a guaranteed price at which to buy that house, or you could phrase the contract such that at current price, or at either at the current price at the time you signed the contract, or at the price that you exercise the purchase clause based on prevailing market rates at that time by mutual agreement with the seller. So if the market has gone down, then you have the opportunity to buy that place at a lower price in the future. And of course, if the other advantage of a lease to own arrangement is, if your personal circumstances change for some reason, if you get invited into a group retreat at another location, you just stop paying the lease and you move out at whatever termination point is allowed in your lease contract, and you're not on the hook for the full purchase price of the property. So it gives you a lot more options. Again, that's called a lease purchase agreement. And they're fairly standard in the real estate world. A lot of people, especially millennials, have never heard about that kind of arrangement. Just do a quick web search on lease purchase agreement for real estate, and your listeners should be able to bring up enough information and even sample contracts so they'll know what that's all about.
One question that people have asked, and this is completely changing topics to general preparedness, they've asked about portability, the importance of being able to be mobile in the case, rather than being hunkered down in your one and only one location. Some of the preparedness staples that we talk about, like water, even silver that you mentioned is not a preparedness staple, but it's an asset, are heavy. And do you have any thoughts that you encourage people to consider when they're trying to plan both a kind of a shelter-in-place plan versus a Go Mobile plan?
Right. The Go Mobile plan is what I recommend for people as a plan B, because you can carry so little with you. It really should not be considered plan A, because otherwise you're just going to end up with a better off than average refugee status. And refugees generally don't have long lifetimes, if you look back at the history of the 20th century, for example. So, in terms of the weight of water and the weight of silver, the only alternatives there would be either parlaying your silver into gold or your silver into platinum. But this is not really an advantageous time to do that. Mm-hmm. This is actually a great time to be selling gold and buying silver. Mm-hmm. But that if weight is and mobility are your concern, then I would go into either gold or something in the platinum metals group, platinum, palladium, whatever. In terms of water, the way around that is to have two different methods for water filtration rather than trying to transport a large quantity of water. At 8 pounds per gallon, water is going to be a huge burden to you if you're going to carry more than about 20 gallons in a RV or a camper or whatever. So I'd recommend that you have two different methods of filtration, preferably one compact filter like a Katahdin combi filter, for example, or any of the other, or even just a life straw, buy 2 or 3 life straws. And then your main filtration method would be a long-term supportable like a Big Berkey, for example. Mm-hmm. With a ceramic filter, you just take a green Scotch pad, a scrubby pad, you clean off the outside of that filter, and it's good for another 10,000 gallons.
Wow.
A white ceramic Doulton filter element, if you're careful and you don't break it, and you don't break it loose from its where it's glued on to its housing, can literally last for a decade of regular use. So I recommend, again, having two different methods of water filtration. That's going to be your key if you're going mobile. One other consideration for going mobile in the modern context that I've been talking a lot with my consulting clients about is the prospect of a stealth camper. If you'll notice out on the highways these days, it seems like half of the campers and RVs you pass going the other direction is going to be a Mercedes Sprinter van. And a lot of those look like RVs, but some of them you would think are a tradesman's vehicle, a plumber, an electrician, whatever, but they're actually stealth campers. And unless you look at the top of that vehicle, which you normally can't see from curbside, to see photovoltaic panels or to see a combination roof vent and fan, typically what's installed is something called a Vantastic. It's V-A-N-tastic vent. Unless you could see the roof of that vehicle, you wouldn't know that it's actually set up as a camper inside. Typically what is purchased is a high roof, extended length Sprinter van, typically from Mercedes, although Dodge also makes one under the Ram name. And inside they're set up like a regular camper, but the body is not a typical camper set up with windows all the way around. It's set up with just a couple of windows in the back and no side windows at all. So it looks like a tradesman's vehicle, when in actuality, if you slide the big door open on the side, you're going to see it set up like a regular camper. I do recommend those for people who want those as a get-out-of-Dodge vehicle or as a Plan B vehicle in case you have to leave your retreat, because those under just day-to-day circumstances can be parked on the street just about anywhere and won't look like they have anything of value in them, especially if you have magnetic signs for the side made that say, you know, Joe's drain cleaning service, mm-hmm. and your 800 number for that you can have your cell phone set up with. If you have signs like that on the side, no one's going to think there's anything of value inside to steal. Mm-hmm. But if you're driving around a Sprinter van that's set up as a luxury camper, people are going to look at that as a target. So I think stealth campers are the way to go.
Interesting. We've seen some vehicles going down the road that we couldn't figure out what they were. It looked like it was a semi, but then as it pulled alongside you, it looked like it was a series of doors, like on the side of a cheap motel. And it's like, are these portable residences for migrant workers, or what are these? We couldn't figure out what it was.
Well, there's actually a lot of expedition vans on the road right now, and they have some really weird angles. Typically, they'll have like a 45-degree angle on the back, which is called a departure angle. And that they do that so that you can cross fairly narrow stream bottoms and not bottom out and drag the back end of a camper. Those are more common in Europe than they are in the States. You also see them some in use in Asia and Africa. And they do look a little bizarre. And unfortunately, those also scream, "I have money." So if you want a low-key way to travel or bug out if need be, I would recommend a full-on stealth camper. Now, you can buy a four-wheel drive version of the Mercedes Sprinter van, so it'll go just about anywhere you have clearance to get it. And if you get the mid-length, you can actually park in a regular parking spot. If you get the super extended version, it's a little bit long for a regular parking spot, but again, it doesn't attract too much notice.
What about retired armored cars?
Those are actually very hard to find, surprisingly, because what happens is the armored car companies don't sell them. They just keep putting new engines in them. And then when they eventually have the frames rust out, they'll lift that entire body, the armored body with the bulletproof windows, and set it on a whole new chassis and just keep going. So there's actually very few of those available. One other possibility that I've seen people mention and I've seen illustrated on the internet, I don't have any experience with them, is retired ambulances. Those have a body or a shell on the back that's quite expansive. They make basically two different types of ambulances in the modern context. One is one where you have to walk hunched over, and the other has literally a 6'3" interior roofline where you can walk around. They have grab bars all down the length of it so that you can walk around in it even when the vehicle's in motion. Because it's all designed for ambulance drivers and ambulance crew. They have a tremendous number of interior compartments that are already built in, and they're designed to lock and not slide open when the vehicle's in motion. There's a huge number of exterior compartments, and they all lock. And the vehicles also have fantastic lighting all the way around. All you have to do is change the red flashing lights to you can get different domes for them and turn them into white continuous on lights, and you have lighting all the way around the vehicle as well. And they even make four-wheel drive ambulances. So if you look around, it's actually one of the easiest vehicles to convert into a camper, and the storage space on board makes it just absolutely perfect for a prepper.
You know, that's one thing that we noticed when we owned, well, I didn't own, we were leasing a conversion van for 2 years, and it was the ghastly lack of care that was put into maximizing the use of space. It's like, really, it's just, as a family with 5 kids and 2 dogs and a home office and homeschool living in a tiny little house that we did, we were getting to be masters at maximizing the use of space, and it was just extravagantly bad at just wasting just big, boxes here and boxes there with no usefulness to them for underneath the seats or up above the windows for curtains or whatever.
If you look at an ambulance and the way it's laid out,
exactly,
it's all about storage. And that center row where the stretcher, the gurney would normally sit, with that's taken out and the brackets for the gurney are removed, then you've got a spot where you can have a bed or combination bed table. And there's tons of plans for those on the internet if you look around. it's really a vehicle that takes minimal conversion. If anything, it's more exterior paint than anything else that needs to be changed.
I suppose for people needing, gray and black water storage and all that sort of thing, that may or may not be built into the original.
It all depends on how they want to set up the camper. If they set it up for wilderness camping with a pedestal mount sink, then you only have to have you don't need a separate freshwater tank. Mm-hmm. And if you set it up with either a composting toilet or a chemical toilet, you don't need a black water tank. Mm-hmm. And so all you would possibly need then is a gray water tank, and that actually could be hand portable as well. That can just simply sit under the sink and be dumped from time to time by hand.
Well, I can't remember an interview where we've covered more breadth of topics in such a short period of time. We've gone from precious metals, stock markets, and cryptos, internet censorship, strategic relocation, and now we're down to chemical toilets in converted ambulances. So anything else that's top of mind before we let you go, Jim?
No, I just want to thank you for making your site available and for the tremendous service that you've done to the prepping community. I don't think you have any idea how many people hear about your ideas either firsthand or secondhand from people who have heard your show. Thank you so much.
Well, we're very grateful for those words. It was actually gratifying to us. Melody and myself attended G. Edward Griffin's Red Pill Expo earlier this month in Hartford, Connecticut. And for the first time ever in public, we had on different occasions, I think it was 4 different occasions during the weekend, someone approach us and say, "Hey, aren't you guys?" And we said, "Yes, we are." And so it was really nice to hear personal stories from people, and it was from all over the country, sharing that how availability of this information was helpful to them. And that really is deeply humbling and gratifying to know that it really is making a difference for people. And Jim, you're a big part of that too, visiting us here and sharing your experience, as well as giving our broader exposure to our publications on your site. So thanks for being here on Reluctant Preppers.
Thank you so much for having me on, Donegan. God bless you and your listeners.
Hey, Reluctant Preppers. If you haven't heard, we've already started our monthly 1-ounce U.S. Silver Eagle thank you gift to one active Patreon subscriber each month, signed by your host, Donegan Kaiser. And you don't want to miss out on that.
Please help us grow by subscribing today at patreon.com/reluctantpreppers.